Trump nominated. All right, a good sense there of where we're going. When Kellyanne Conway said what she said about buying that particular product, that was wrong, wrong, wrong. I called it out. They need to investigate it. What Kellyanne Conway was wrong, it should never happen again, and there should be some accountability there. Absolutely.
That is
they're booing even when he says what they want to hear.
Do your job was the chant, if you could make it out.
I think they were going to boo everything.
Yeah.
He said he was going to bring Christmas to February, and they booed it.
Do your job.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that was Republican Jason Chaffetz getting a hard time last night at a town hall in his home state of Utah, coming under fire.
Well, Utah's a
rough
liberal hotbed, though.
Including pressure to look into Kellyanne Conway. His committee has expressed concern into whether Conway violated ethics law just 20 days into the Trump
The answer would be yes.
I think it's pretty obvious.
Conway kicked up a controversy yesterday while defending first daughter Ivanka Trump's products, which Nordstrom, as you know, decided to stop carrying, saying it was because of declining sales. Despite a 26% drop in online sales in January alone, the White House claimed the decision was political. Conway made this plea on Fox News from inside the White House.
I don't want to see this.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Go buy Ivanka's stuff is what I would tell you. I hate shopping. I'm going to go get some on myself today. It's a wonderful line. I own some of it. I'm going to give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
So Conway was accused of running afoul of the law.
It's a wonderful line. It's a wonderful line, she says, with the White House shield behind her. You can't do that.
It's the shield.
And by the way, Ivanka can speak for herself. We all know Ivanka.
Yeah.
Right? She can speak for herself. These people need to stop. They're not doing her any favors. They need to stop.
The law we were just talking about prohibits an employee from making, quote, the endorsement of any product, service, or enterprise on behalf of others or even nonprofit groups. The website for the Office of Government Ethics crashed in the hours following Kellyanne's comment. Chaffetz and Democrat Elijah Cummings, the top lawmakers on the House Oversight Committee, in a rare moment of agreement, asked for the office to review Conway's statements and act promptly with a recommendation for disciplinary action if warranted. But the recommendation goes to the executive branch, which said Conway had been, quote, counseled. Last night, Conway commented on that and on the letter from Congress.
How were you counseled?
I'm not going to comment on that.
They say that they consider that to be a very serious, potentially a serious violation of the government ethics code.
We're aware of that letter, and we're reviewing that internally. I'm just really happy that I spent an awful lot of time with the President of the United States this afternoon, and that he supports me 100%. We spoke about a range of matters, and he supports me 100%. In fact, it was a very heartening moment. All I can say to America's women is, at some point in your life, you ought to have a boss who treated me the way that the President of the United States treated me today.
So that was Kellyanne Conway last night. A report earlier this morning in the Associated Press suggests Donald Trump didn't like the word counseled. In fact, he thought Sean Spicer shouldn't have used it, and that he supports Kellyanne Conway.
Who said
The Associated Press said Donald Trump didn't like that Sean Spicer.
He thought Sean Spicer went too far, and the Associated Press reporting, and I've confirmed that he's saying she's fine. He understands why she did.
He views Kellyanne as defending his daughter, which is what he was doing in the Nordstrom tweet.
And he really likes the way that Kellyanne goes on television and fights for him with whatever it takes, and he likes it when she fights for his daughter as well.
And he'd be the decider if there was any notion that she did something wrong. So while I think there's a general agreement that she did something wrong, it appears that her boss doesn't think she did.
You know, it's unbelievable, and you can see this coming, as my torts professor would say, like a freight train out of the mist. The White House is going to get a letter, and they're going to say she violated the ethics code, and then are they going to really do nothing about this?
I don't know how that happens.
Are they going to? Because if they do, that sets up, you know what, that's one big ethics nick. Where the government
Credibility is at stake here.
Well,
her credibility
it's more
is,
than that.
I'm not
At
with,
this
I'm
point,
sorry,
it's more
it's
than that.
shot.
I think it's the credibility of a White House that has already conflict of interest problems,
Yeah.
questions.
She doesn't know the lines. She doesn't respect the lines. She doesn't really. I watched her throughout the campaign. I thought she was very adept at trying to translate for the campaign and trying to work around things. But she doesn't know the lines now that she's in Washington.
We always talk about what would happen in other White Houses, what would happen here, what would happen there. If somebody had done this on the heels of the Bowling Green massacre, on the heels of so many other things,
there's no credibility left.
They'd be gone in a second.
I don't know.
You can say this for the president. He's consistent. He holds his employees to the same standards he holds himself.
Joining us now, senior writer at Politico and co-author of the playbook, Jake Sherman. What are you looking at today, Jake?
Well, first of all, that letter, I just want to add to that. I think that if they don't do anything, you saw the pressure that Jason Chaffetz is under in a district where he won with 75% of the vote, one of the most conservative districts in the country. That's an R+25, which means the average Republican wins by 25 points. So Chaffetz is going to come under pressure. If Donald Trump doesn't do anything on Kellyanne Conway, he's going to have to hold a hearing, and I think he's going to have the political pressure to do so. But on the element of the protests, I think something big is happening across the country, and Republican leadership sent out a letter last night with this quote, "We aren't grasping for relevancy," and I think the point that they're trying to make is Democrats are, and that's what they're chalking this up to, and I think that's a bit of a mistake. I think you're seeing this across the country, not only in R+25 districts, but in less conservative districts that Republicans need to hold in 2018. So, like you said earlier, Joe, this is approaching 2009, 2010 levels, and we're only 2 weeks into the administration.
Right, and so Republicans should learn from Democrats who I think were like, they're crazies. You know, you would see them, they'd go out and they'd be shocked. And I actually think Jason Chaffetz last night, from everything we've heard, was very gracious with the crowd.
Absolutely.
Listen to them. That's what you do.
Easy.
You know what? And also, my recommendation to anybody that's getting booed, pull up a chair, sit down, take off your coat, roll up your sleeves, say, I'm here. You know, you guys want to talk to me? Let's talk. You guys want to scream?
I mean, that was a jeering, leering crowd.
Yeah.
It wasn't even...
But you play them out. You don't rush in and then rush out. You sit there.
You did a good job.
And you take it. You know, Caddy, one of the crazy things about this administration is there are always so many distractions. Here's a Kellyanne distraction, the latest Kellyanne distraction, which actually eclipses what actually should be top of the news, which is the president had, by all accounts, a remarkably positive call with China last night. There was a lot of concern that we were going to have bad relations with China because of his call with Taiwan. Everything that we've heard about that call with China was really positive, and it looks like one of the most important relationships in the world is back on firm footing. But this has happened nonstop. I told the story a couple days ago. I wrote a positive column about the inside working of the Trump administration, how they were learning from their mistakes and comparing it to Kennedy, who screwed up to the Bay of Pigs, and Clinton, which was chaos for a while. I couldn't write it because on Saturday, what was it Saturday? Oh, he attacked the judge. So I said, okay, well, that's okay. I'll do it on Monday. But then on Monday, I had to respond to the Vladimir Putin. I mean, they keep... So here, Kellyanne Conway is standing on top
again
of a great story of this call with China, which is far more significant than probably anything that happened yesterday other than the 9th decision.
He got 2 cabinet members confirmed.
Right.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be the story of the morning if they were playing this right? The Chinese call, the cabinet confirmations, this is exactly what he wants people to be talking about. And I think that they have either they have a real communications problem,
they do,
or there is something about this White House that deliberately wants to foment chaos, and this is the spin-off you get from chaos. Can you have populist insurgency and effective functioning government? I think that's that's the process we're trying to figure out at the moment.
Jake, and this has to be increasingly maddening for Republicans on the Hill. They will only take so much of this. I know how it works. I mean, Jason Chaffetz, you could see him last night going, okay, yes, okay, we're going to have an investigation. He has no choice now.
Zero choice. And another thing that's angering Republicans on the Hill, yesterday Donald Trump goes in front of airline CEOs and says, I'm releasing a tax plan in 2 weeks. And Republicans on the Hill, when I spoke to them yesterday, said, you're releasing a tax plan in 2 weeks? No one knew what he was talking about. And they're not ready for a tax plan, and they're not ready to do Obamacare. And why is he releasing this? And I think that, listen, maybe we could chalk this up to them getting their footing early, but the patience is wearing increasingly thin as Republicans have to continue to defend a top aide hawking a clothing line in front of the White House briefing podium, just kind of chaos of plans. And also, remember, he's going to Florida today with the Japanese Prime Minister, which also could be a good story. He's going to reestablish trade ties after TPP collapses or he withdraws from it. We're hearing kind of nothing of that. There's no consistent messaging.
So that's another great example, and I know we have to go to break, but thank you for bringing that up, Jay. So he had a great call with China last night, by all accounts, and he is going golfing this weekend with the Prime Minister of Japan, which, as we all know, I mean, that's 5, 6, 7 hours of those two together. That's pretty damn important. But all of this other news,
in which the Japanese will announce a major investment into American infrastructure spending.
Yes, with the Japanese I mean, this is done right without all the distractions. There's some great headlines that this administration just can't get out of the way to let people print.
The foreign policy stuff's obviously important, and a better relationship with Japan would be great. I still think, and we've talked about it before, he's got to figure out how to move on the big piece of his legislative agenda. And the biggest problem with these distractions are not that they're distractions in the media, but that individual elements really annoy certain Republicans who he needs. You know, if he doesn't have John McCain on tax reform, not good.
Jake Sherman, thank you very much. Coming up, former Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz joins the discussion about the big ruling on the president's travel ban. Plus, what did Michael Flynn say to the Russian ambassador before?
That's Rosie O'Donnell as photoshopped
right
into
now,
Bannon.
look at that.
That is funny.
I'm going to be up all night.
So we got
Saturday
Melissa
night.
McCarthy as Sean Spicer
Oh my
last
God.
Saturday. Perhaps some people are saying that will happen this Saturday.
Two incredible women going after him
would be something.
in a big way.
And Alec Baldwin is hosting, so you can just imagine what they're planning upstairs at this very moment.
This is epic.
Boy, don't know where this is going.
I think it's huge. We'll be right back with Alan Dershowitz. This morning, multiple news outlets report that National Security Advisor Michael Flynn privately discussed U.S. sanctions against Russia with that country's ambassador.
But he said he didn't.
No. Well, the report from the Washington Post sources 9 current and former officials who say the talks came weeks before the election and continued through the transition. Flynn reportedly urged Sergei Kislyak not to overreact over a new wave of sanctions, that they would be revisited once Trump was sworn in. The New York Times says Flynn's suggestions that sanctions could end under the new administration were, quote, unambiguous and highly inappropriate, if not a potential violation of the Logan Act, which forbids unauthorized citizens from negotiating with foreign governments having a dispute with the U.S. The Post reports that on Wednesday, Flynn said flatly no, twice when asked whether he had discussed sanctions with the ambassador. But yesterday, a spokesman followed up with the paper, saying Flynn, quote, indicated that while he had no recollection of discussing sanctions, he couldn't be certain that the topic never came up.
Yikes, we know where this is going. With us now is veteran columnist and MSNBC contributor, Mike Barnicle.
Mike's tired, like we all are, from all of this stuff.
All right.
I mean, my God.
And from Miami, we've got Professor Emeritus at Harvard Law School, Alan Dershowitz. Alan, we have so much to talk to you about, but why don't we begin, first of all, with the Logan Act. Obviously, this is going to be an extraordinarily difficult case for anybody to make, but walk us through it.
1799, the Logan Act gets passed. In 1803, it's applied once in its history to some farmer who wrote an article. It's never, ever going to be applied. If it were, Jimmy Carter and Jesse Jackson would be sharing a jail cell. Jimmy Carter has negotiated with so many governments adverse to the interests of the United States after he became president. Jesse Jackson has done the same thing. Ronald Reagan made a deal with Iran about releasing the hostages before he was elected. Nobody has ever applied the Logan Act. It's probably unconstitutional. It's a threat, but it's a threat that's hollow.
Well, yeah, and you know, I even heard last night from critics who have been really harsh on Donald Trump, but who also have been in government service, saying, "Hey, listen, if we're going into office 3 weeks from now, we want the ability to start planning and talking to some people. If there were any violation here and he were prosecuted, that would set future administrations back."
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
The decision last night, it seems like, let's see, what was Chris Matthews' quote last night that I liked so much? The court got into somebody else's marmalade. I think he said. But Ellen, I thought after reading through it that the 9th judges were very fortunate that Anthony Scalia wasn't still around to write a withering majority opinion overturning what happened last night. Sort through what I think was nonsense.
Well, that's the dilemma, I think, the conundrum that is faced by the Trump administration. They have a winning argument, potentially, on the merits of it if it gets to the Supreme Court, especially as it relates to people who have never been in the country, have no connection to the country, the family in Yemen that simply wants to get a visa. They probably would win, but it's going to take them months to win. And the president's saying this poses an immediate threat to our national security. So the only real option he has at this point is to either rescind the order and write a new one, or just write a new one, a supplementary order. So we have a conflict now between Donald Trump's ego, doesn't want to say he was wrong, and the national security of the United States. And I think national security has to trump ego.
I think it will this
How
time,
can it be
Mike.
amended?
So, Alan, as with thousands of people prior to this, he calls you to help on the appeal. Many people call you to help on the appeal. Write the appeal for us right now. What would you do?
First, I fire the lawyer for the government who argued this appeal. Second, I argue on the basis of standing and say that this is the most extreme stretch of the standing requirement that the courts have ever experienced, saying that the state of Washington has standing for somebody in Yemen they never met, who's never been in the United States.
Well, and Alan, the court just dismissively basically said, yes, we have standing. They didn't even go into it, which is one of the key issues there. I mean, the state of Washington did not have standing.
Of course, but the government fell into the trap by saying that there was no possibility of review here. Of course the court has the power to review. You never tell a court that it doesn't have the power to review and expect that they're going to remain silent in response. Also, the establishment argument is not a strong argument. Here you have 7 countries picked by the Obama administration. We do have Islamic extremism and terrorism. So you pick 7 countries, they're all Muslim. Is that surprising? Should they have added Armenia just to avoid the idea that it's an establishment? So I think the argument on the merits will probably prevail in the Supreme Court. That is the Trump argument. It may well prevail, but it'll take them too much time to get there. And the Supreme Court's not going to grant a stay because it would create chaos at this point. So they have to make a very hard decision. And for the sake of America, I hope they make the right decision.
Alan Dershowitz, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Professor.
We'll have much more ahead on what the Trump administration's next steps will be after losing the latest court battle over that travel ban. And breaking news overnight, as the president gets another cabinet member confirmed. Tom Price, now set to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. We'll have more on that party line vote that came down at 2 a.m. Morning Joe is coming.
The woman said, "This is a nightmare. The flight out of LaGuardia was canceled. It could be days before I get out of here." This man said, "My flight was delayed for 6 hours, then canceled. I don't expect to get home anytime soon." And finally, this woman said, "Oh no, looks like I can't make it to Washington, D.C. this weekend. Bummer for me."
Welcome back to Morning Joe. It's Friday. Are we all glad it's Friday?
All glad.
The news won't stop, though. February 10th. Still with us, we have veteran columnist Mike Barnacle.
The vet.
Political analyst, co-author of Game Change, Mark Halperin. Wow. Commentary editor for the Washington Examiner, Tim Carney, and joining the conversation, the president and CEO of the Aspen Institute, best-selling author, Walter Isaacson. Good to have you all on board. What are you all laughing about?
I'm not laughing at Michael.
Really? They're up to something.
So,
well, we're up with
why don't we start with a little news?
Yeah.
That heard from several sources that the White House is right now working on redrafting.
Well, that would be
an executive order, but want to make sure that it's tight enough to pass.
That's huge news.
Professor Dershowitz just gave him the exact outline. It was perfect.
Gave him the outline.
Send over the transcript.
Let me ask you this, though. By the standard that we'll talk about in a second that the Ninth laid out yesterday, what version of the executive order could clear that court? It was so broad. You know what I mean? I don't know what order could they get through the court.
Well, that's what the lawyers are going to be trying to figure out today. Also, it's hard to figure out how you pass a court's test when the court last night ruled as broadly as they did. And I mean, start with the first issue, standing. I still find it hard to believe that the Supreme Court of the United States would even find standing with Washington State. Because to bring a case before federal court, you have to have standing. You have to be injured. Yeah. You have to list a specific injury to yourself, and you have to show how the court, by ruling, can redress your injury.
Can they forum shop?
And yes, that's one of the biggest problems. And yet, U.S. Barack Obama, and he will be the first to say how outrageous it was that you'd have Republicans taking his executive orders down to Texas.
Right.
And then there would be a national injunction. This is what's so outrageous, that one judge can stop everything that's going on. Again, not worry about the one person with the one injury or one group of people with groups of injuries. They come and they stop it for the entire country. They did it with Obama several times, which is maddening for them, and they would forum shop in Texas. Now Democrats are going to forum shop in the Ninth. And here's the problem. You can win in every other circuit. But if you find one federal judge somewhere that will stop something and they implement a national injunctive relief, it stops everything, which, again, the courts are going to have, for the good of the entire judicial system, courts are going to have to figure out a way to remedy this.
Well, the Supreme Court's supposed to be doing that when you have disputed cases. But I don't.
And that's a problem. Right. You don't get to having. You won't have the 11th battling the 9th if a judge in the 9th freezes everything immediately. So that's one of the problems. You don't have all the different cases coming out of all the different circuits.
Well, that's the Supreme Court, if it wanted to, could stay the Ninth Circuit's restraining order. I think what it's, I wouldn't get too worked up about standing. I think we kind of like it when people can go to the courts, especially at a time like this, for relief. It happened with Obama when his executive orders were being challenged in Texas. The state had standing because it was issuing driver's licenses. That was sort of flimsy, but it was real. It was like, okay, let's let it be decided in court. I think we want this one to be decided in court. These states have universities, they have students coming in, they need to have this decided. I would hate to see this thrown out on standing.
Who are the potential people? The state, it's flimsy all the way through the process.
I admit that.
They need to find a specific plaintiff and argue that specifically.
Isn't the Supreme Court, if they go to the Supreme Court, isn't the Supreme Court more likely than not to kick it back downstairs to the district, though?
It's hard to say. Right now, because you have a very politicized court that's 4-4, it's more likely to just go 4-4. And
all arguments for redrafting.
Exactly. I mean, Mika's got the point.
And Tim Carney, that is the question. Like you said last hour, this is what everybody is hoping happens. But the concern inside the White House is what happens if they redraft.
Right.
And then somebody goes, forum shops and goes straight out to the 9th again.
But the standing point you have there points to how to redraft it, and actually sort of a philosophical issue here, right? When Washington is claiming standing, they're pointing to the people who are in Washington, who have a strong connection to the country. That's the current visa holders and that sort of thing. If you draft it so it doesn't include them, then a court would have to find standing for people who are outside of the country, do not have a visa, and want to come here. There's plenty of precedent. The argument that a guy in Iraq who doesn't have a visa isn't here, doesn't have any legal right yet to come here, the idea that he has standing because now he's blocked, that would be an absurd argument. I'm not saying the Ninth Circuit couldn't find that. The Ninth Circuit could find anything.
Well, the problem,
everybody has
of
standing.
course, last night is, and this is one of the most outrageous parts of this outrageous argument, they actually left open the argument that somebody in Iran or Somalia that wasn't a citizen, that didn't have a green card, that just wanted to come to the United States, might be a potential client. There may be potential. The Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly there is no standing there.
And that's why a more narrowly tailored rule would set that aside. But it also plays perfectly into Trump's argument that drives so much of the elite class crazy when he says, America first, Americans first. We're going to create an immigration policy that serves us. The Ninth Circuit, the left, wants me to create an immigration policy that serves the rest of the world. Guess what? That's not my job. I'm the President of the United States. Trump would love to have that fight politically.
Mark Halpern, you're hearing the same thing, are you not, about the redrafting of this executive order?
Yeah, on first blush, the conventional wisdom was for both the politics and the substance, the smartest thing to do would be to redraft the order. But there's no doubt that somewhere, some in the country, including in the Ninth Circuit, someone will bring a case against any revised order, and the administration would then be back with the clock still ticking, tying them up politically and legally until the thing got adjudicated again. So they face a tough choice, but I think there's no doubt that they're going to be at least thinking about, can they redraft something that not only addresses the order that was issued by the appeals panel, but can they redraft something that can build consensus that won't be seen as divisive and as sloppy as the first order.
But that assumes that's what they want, that they want to do something that would be unifying and not divisive.
Reports are they're trying to redraft it.
The problem for them, Walter, is if they're claiming that the country's in imminent danger and they must have an executive order in place, they can't sit back and play games, because then the blame goes to the White House instead of the courts.
You and I agree on that.
Okay, this is actually being thought out on live television.
21 days into this presidency.
Then there's this on day 21.
Just think, they're 3 and 10, 12, 5/6 of a year.
Amazing.
Okay.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, we just have to pace ourselves here. Pace yourself. The back and forth battle between the White House and Senator John McCain continues over McCain calling a deadly raid in Yemen a failure. In a series of tweets yesterday, the president wrote in part, Senator McCain should not be talking about the success or failure of a mission to the media. Only emboldens the enemy. He's been losing so long, he doesn't know how to win anymore. Our hero Ryan died on a winning mission, according to General Mattis, not a failure. McCain's press secretary responded in a statement, quote, Senator McCain will continue to execute his oversight duties as chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee and support the brave men and women serving our nation in uniform. Some Senate Republicans are also speaking out in favor of John McCain.
John McCain is a hero and a United States Senator who speaks his mind, and somebody that we all listen to, particularly when it comes to national security matters.
I don't agree with that assessment by the president. My recollection was John McCain was commenting about the military efficacy of the operation didn't ultimately achieve its military objectives. I don't think that in any way diminishes the bravery, the courage, or quite frankly takes away from the tragic loss of life that we saw in regards to that operation. It didn't achieve its military objective, its ultimate military objective, but I don't know why that's incompatible from the idea that it doesn't in any way take away from the heroism of the people that participated in it. Not every military operation is going to achieve its, we're not guaranteed success or ultimate success in every endeavor we take on. I mean, the bad guys have guns too.
Meanwhile, Vice President Mike Pence seemed to address the situation yesterday while visiting West Point without mentioning Senator McCain or the raid directly.
Know that we will always support you, not second guess you. And we will never call your courageous service or your sacrifice a failure.
This is another case of the White House creating a problem where there really didn't need to be one. When Sean Spicer went 2 days ago in the White House briefing room and said it's a disservice to Navy SEAL Ryan Owens to question the efficacy of the mission and to use him somehow as a shield for their argument, it was just unnecessary. I mean, you can say it's tragic we lost one of the best people we had in this country, Ryan Owens.
Let us take Donald Trump at his word.
Right.
He opposed Iraq. He said it was a stupid war. He was critical of it nonstop through the campaign. Let us take him at his own word. By his standard, he is disrespecting the lives of 4,500 fallen heroes. They cannot have it both ways. And this is just a stupid fight where you have a 2-vote majority in the United States Senate. When push comes to shove, that is now 50-50, because I guarantee you McCain and Lindsey are peeled off now.
The president and Sean Spicer are just so totally wrong on this and the way they're going at this. There are after-action reports and everything like this that occurs. Wait till they read the after-action report before they start shooting their mouths off.
Tim Carney, I'll throw it to you, but all these unforced errors, I can think of now 2, I could probably make a list of 5 in this week, where the White House clearly, and quite frankly, based on our own reporting, is obsessing over things, obsessing over battles that they don't need to fight and are stepping on their own headlines. They are obsessing, I know for a fact, over the attacks on Ivanka Trump. Instead of doing the right thing and rolling out Ivanka Trump and talking about what Ivanka Trump wants to do in Washington, which are great things, she has put her family aside and she has moved to Washington to try and create a platform for women. Where is she on that? Instead, they're obsessing about Nordstrom's, and Kellyanne Conway is sucking up to them, trying to shop her stuff. Everybody's out of control because they're obsessing about these fights. Same with
sucking up to them in a way that hurts them at the same time.
Yeah, you know that Donald Trump does not like to have any slight go without a punch back in the face. So Sean Spicer goes out there and feels he has to fight over every little word, all these semantics, fighting over the word ban when they were using the word ban, fighting over whether or not this was a failure. Going out there, you know Donald Trump was upset that Nordstrom went after Ivanka, and so he goes out there and he says this is an attack on the president's policies. I thought that was a horrible idea. Confirms all of our worries about the conflicts of interest with Trump's business. But so Spicer's going out there being the brawling guy who can't let a slight or a perceived slight go without a response. This makes Donald Trump the easiest president in the world to distract from anything he's doing. All you have to do, and this was what Hillary tried to do during the campaign, throw him a barb and he goes right back at it. So I think the semantic fights really do drag them down, because you know what, the adversarial media loves fighting over words. That's their favorite thing to do, is fight over words. And this fight will go on forever.
Very good point.
And now, it's a great point. And now, of course, you have more than just a back and forth fight. You have an ethics violation.
Yep.
And what's going to be attached to that?
Made by sloppy obsessiveness.
And you watch, there's an ethics violation. Let's say it goes to the White House. They ignore it.
When it's clear.
And people that want to take him out of office eventually, they'll say, okay, we're going to put that right there. One of Bill Clinton's, by the way, articles of impeachment by a Republican Congress is for abusing his office. Right. You hear about high crimes and misdemeanors. One of his articles of impeachment was for abusing his office. People that are going to do that will just put that right there. And Walter, what does this eclipse? This eclipses an important phone call with a leader of China.
Right. You have a leader of China, you have meetings with the Japanese Prime Minister, everything like that. And what you do is you create a narrative. And unfortunately, the narrative of this administration, which plays into Trump, you can't blame it on Sean Spicer or whatever, this is Trump. The narrative is he's sort of aggrandizing himself, he's helping himself. There's a sort of whiff of corruption as he enriches himself through things, and then does it with Ivanka, which she does not deserve.
Well, and also, quite frankly, just to be really, this hurt her brand. If they wanted to be, if you care about these things and you're thinking about things, they literally did the opposite thing that they should have done if they were trying to protect that.
It's like Melania's lawsuit. It all plays into a narrative. You want the narrative to be, we're meeting with the Japanese Prime Minister because TPP was actually well thought through, our decision to move away from it, and we're going to make individual trade deals.
And then we talked to China. There was a big problem with China, but we talked through it, and actually we're going to try to figure out how to have
We're playing by the conventional rules.
But that's actually, here's the bizarre thing, Walter. In some ways, on the inside, they're playing by conventional rules. Right. Mattis is doing what Mattis needs to do. Tillerson is calling who Tillerson needs to call. We saw yesterday reports of what I heard them talking about 4 or 5 weeks ago, that they were going to move towards a Middle East peace from the outside in, that they were going to go to...
Smart move.
It is a very smart move.
One that they haven't got much publicity on because...
And guess what? They're doing it quietly. They're doing it with Saudi Arabia. They're doing it with Egypt. They're doing it with UAE. They're doing it with Jordan. He talked with the King of Jordan. They are all quietly working behind the scenes, and believe it or not, we would never know this, but they actually are advancing forward on a lot of foreign policy initiatives that may end up paying off in a big way. But all we hear about is, because of them, it's their fault, the nasty phone call with the Prime Minister of Australia, the nasty phone call with Merkel.
But there's a larger narrative they're going to have to get out of, which is the Russia thing.
The Russia
with
thing.
Michael Flynn and what he did and him walking back his comment or his denial that he had done it, you're going to always be looking at this narrative of, are they playing it for Russia? Does Russia...
Here's another example, something that most people missed. There was a readout on the Putin call, where Trump said, and by the way, this is something for us to all kind of think about. You know, Donald Trump crazy, but in some cases crazy like a fox. He's on the phone with Putin, and Putin's talking about an arms treaty. He goes, oh wait, what's that? What? I don't know what that is. What is that, guys? And he's talking, and his staff tells him, he goes, oh, I don't like that. No, that's another thing about my... And so he pushed back on the arms treaty. And so people reading that would go, oh, God, he's so dumb. He didn't even know there was an arm. Maggie Haberman said he was talking about it in detail 4 weeks earlier. And they were talking about their strategic plans. Like, the guy knew. He was sitting there playing Putin, like, you know, basically being passive-aggressive, I guess. But again, it's
What doesn't work with the narrative that, you know, his national security advisor was, you know, playing things behind the scenes before they came in.
What people should be talking about today also, along with China and Japan, is the fact that he pushed back on Putin and said, no, we're not going to agree.
But that's the nut of his problem. I mean, the big story today is China.
Right.
And it's the
but nobody's talking about it.
Between China and we're talking about his tweeting about John McCain because we have a president for whom politics is personal and the personal is political.
And by the way, on the Ninth Circuit, Mika, there is, not only is there not a long game here, there's not an intermediate game. If he had said nothing about the Ninth Circuit decision, nothing. If he had stayed back, been quiet, let the Ninth Circuit do what we all knew. You were talking about one of your friends that was on the Ninth Circuit. Basically a communist.
Basically,
I mean,
Chief Justice of Venezuela.
Yeah, exactly. If he had just stayed out of the way, let them overreach, then all of the attention would have been on the Ninth Circuit's overreach.
Some of these stories go away. The shiny objects of Sean Spicer or Kellyanne Conway, it's the communications message. It's unbelievably like kindergarten here. I mean, no. Ivanka thing. That could have been done with Tuesday. Ivanka Trump has moved to Washington. She's put her business interests aside. She's resettling her family in Washington and creating a platform for women.
And she can take care of herself.
By the way, that's probably better for whatever is happening down the road with her brand. And instead, they have probably hurt it even more. You will see more businesses saying, you know what, no thank you.
They stepped on it, Tim.
I really do think that what the key story on the Nordstrom thing is not what Kellyanne Conway said. That's eye-catching. But when Sean Spicer didn't let it go away with he's a proud dad defending his daughter, but said this is an attack on his policies, I really think this sends a really upsetting message. Anybody if you're a tenant in Trump Tower, if you're a businessman who has a branding deal overseas, all those people says, oh, well, this is political for you to cut ties. If you cut ties, if you don't keep holding your conference at his hotel, I mean, this is really a corruption
They're all sucking
formula.
up so badly.
That's an important line. A corruption formula.
It is a corrupting formula.
All around the world, all his hotels, you got to worry. Are they going to take it as a slight if somebody cuts off a business deal with them? And if you cut it off for political reasons, well, political reasons are economic reasons when you've got an unpopular president, especially an elite brand. Nordstrom's customers are not the people in Pennsylvania who elected Trump. The wealthy elites in cities, they don't like the Trumps. And so it's a business decision. They have every right to do that. Are you going to sick Sean Spicer on everybody who doesn't do as much business with the Trumps as Donald Trump wants them to?
When it gets to be a whiff of corruption, which is what's happened now, it's going to be hard to shake that smell.
Tim Carney, thank you very much.
How does it affect what perhaps might be the most important thing in the president's mind, the Trump brand?
Yeah, well.
The Trump brand.
Would be better off if they all stopped sucking up.
I mean,
Walter
you've got a carnival
Isaacson,
of conflict going on.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of policy being done behind the scenes, which they never get out.
You're right. All right, still ahead, Tom Price is now the latest Trump cabinet nominee to survive a contentious confirmation process. That's 9 down, 8 more to go. Plus, why is Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer trying to downplay Judge Neil Gorsuch's comments that Trump's attacks against federal judges were demoralizing?
I got to say, the Democrats
I'm really tired.
and the DNC are misplaying this so badly.
God it's Friday.
They're embarrassing themselves. The DNC, the statement they put out last night was really, really disappointing.
You're watching Morning Joe. We'll be right back.
Evidence that any alien from any of the countries named in the order have perpetrated a terrorist attack in the United States, as if it is the executive branch's job to actually get the intel community in and say these are all the things that are going to happen. No, in fact, Barack Obama worked with a bipartisan Congress to come up with these 7 countries, not because there were specific attacks, but because they saw a deteriorating security situation that they wanted to remedy. They wanted to prevent attacks. That's the entire purpose of that. Anyway, so this will be overturned. But I think, let's bring in via Skype, professor at George Washington University, Jonathan Turley. Jonathan, if anyone in the White House has any sense, they will just take a couple of days, use the interagency process, and more narrowly draft this, so all of this discussion quickly becomes moot.
Well, I think it was poorly drafted at the outset. It was a horrible rollout. I think there's almost uniform view of that on both sides of this. But I agree that this is a rather curious opinion, and in the art world it'd be called impressionistic. You know, it's
well done.
You know, the courts. You know, the court takes these very broad views of not just the law, but the facts. I mean, the administration has said that one of the reasons these countries are on the list is that they don't have reliable ways of confirming information for entry. Not simply that they produced actual terrorists, but that their records, their process, their procedures are not trusted. Now, you can disagree with that, but that's an argument that the administration made. It's simply dismissed. The court also dismissed the fact that green card holders were exempted and said that it just doesn't trust that that exemption will be permanent or that it was done correctly. So there's a lot to really question about this opinion.
And Jonathan, in that case, that's another thing that stood out. You actually had the chairman of the Department of Homeland Security testify that green card holders were in fact exempt. And yet the court, as you said, they took the broadest, sometimes inaccurate, but the broadest view of all of the facts thrown out, and they just cherry-picked them. I thought it was also fascinating that they said, well, you can go back and see what Donald Trump said in the campaign where he talked about a Muslim ban, a Muslim ban, a Muslim ban. Well, later in the campaign, he started specifically saying it's not a Muslim ban, and we're going to go to extreme vetting. Again, everybody can debate Donald Trump and his psychology and why he did that. But you and I both know that a court cannot go back to a previous statement, drag it in, and use that as the intent of an order. And also, aren't you shocked? Why didn't they use the underlying statute that actually gives presidents the power to do this?
No, that was particularly strange. It's like that old joke of helping a guy look for a missing ring under a lamp and saying, "You sure you lost it here?" And he says, "No, but the light's better here." The court seemed to prefer to analyze something that wasn't exactly what was before it. There were compelling arguments made on both sides, but it largely ignored the arguments on one side. And I think that's what's going to prompt the administration likely to go to the Supreme Court, even though it's a justice short.
Yeah.
And,
Jonathan Turley, thank you.
And there
very
was
much.
Jonathan really quick. There's a balancing act here, right? Between the injuries that people are going to sustain or potentially sustain, and again, we have no specific plaintiffs here, so that's problematic, versus basically the government's power to protect its people. And you read this opinion, 29 pages of it, it is all, again, there is no balance. It's all weighted, again, not to specific harm and injury, but to potential due process claims. It was extraordinarily unbalanced and makes for very bad law.
No, I have to agree with that. I was very surprised by it. And, they put everything they had on due process. When they got to the religious discrimination, they basically stated both sides and said the record's really not here to decide this question. I didn't think it was a very compelling opinion, and it doesn't really give a very good compelling basis to go forward with on the other side. Now, having said that, taking a TRO appeal to the Supreme Court is itself a precarious measure, but I don't think the administration views it as having much of a choice.
Jonathan Turley, thank you very much. Reaction, my gosh, after this happened yesterday was wild on Twitter. Hillary Clinton tweeting 3-0. Just, that's all. Just laying it out there.
Kellyanne Conway tweeting back.
Whoa.
Pennsylvania,
Kelly and
Wisconsin,
Conway needs to
Michigan.
stop being a runaway beer truck. That's just my editorial advice.
That's what we say, Northwest Florida.
I told her to go get a job. She's going to end up
sleep,
in the...
Some sleep would help.
Nope. She's telling you all the truth.
It's just not.
But Donald Trump is learning,
Yes.
whether we think this is fair or not, how things work. He's learning right now how things work.
And again,
I
want to make sure, Willie, that you, because you matter most to me because of our special relationship.
Yeah, go on.
Again, this is, I'm saying about the court's decision what I said about the executive order. The executive order was outrageous, and it was disheartening, and it showed the worst side of America. It showed sloppiness in the White House. I hate politicized decisions too, and I feel kind of stupid after slamming Donald Trump for several weeks or saying don't say that, that the courts are politicized, that they come out and give what
and they were tweeting, by the way,
looks like a very politicized decision and disheartening. And
after.
And when he says, "We'll see you in court," and that was his big tweet, all caps, "We'll see you in court." He's right. That's the next step here.
Yeah,
and it throws, as Jonathan Turley said, it throws this Supreme Court conversation into a fascinating context, doesn't it? 4-4 decision means this ruling by the 9th is the ruling. They can't overturn it under 4-4, obviously.
Mark Halpern has been shaking his head. He's been talking to Nicaraguan lawyers and some in Havana, so go ahead. What say they?
Look, they did put everything on due process, and they took advantage of the sloppiness of the order.
Right.
And even the revision by the Homeland Security Direct Secretary and the White House counsel. But the political reality of this is if the White House doesn't redraft it, and if they want to fight it out in court, I think it will be pain for them for weeks.
Oh, I totally agree.
So they're unlucky. The fastest case that developed to the Court of Appeals level was in the Ninth Circuit. They have this decision. I don't agree with everything that's been said about the decision. I agree with some of it, but the reality of it
we'll
is
pass your complaints to Jonathan Turley.
I'll take it up with him directly. I mean, for instance, I think the standing thing is kind of ridiculous, but they did cite some specific people in the opinion. There are some specific people. Now, I agree with you. Those are the people who should be bringing the complaint, not the
state of Washington.
But they do
and
cite
again,
some
that's another thing
people.
Scalia would chop them to bits about.
The president, the president, the lawyer who argued this to the Justice Department at the end tried to change his position a little bit and back off, which is not uncommon.
And by the way, he did. I think most legal observers agreed. Let's just say it. He did a horrific job. One of the worst jobs. He went in with one of the greatest advantages. This was the legal version of the Atlanta Falcons winning 28-3 going into the fourth quarter. I mean it. There is no way that lawyer should have bungled that.
But I'll just say one thing about the rule, about the opinion. The president does have extraordinary power to control the border.
Right.
But if he proposed saying we're not going to let anyone in named Jones,
right,
then you'd say the court has a right to strike that down.
Right, exactly.
They've basically taken the position that a number of people in different categories have due process rights that were not correctly dealt with by the nature of the order. They're being overly deferential to that argument, I think, and certainly the White House thinks that.
So, Joe, I have a question for you. Clearly, the White House counsel has some answering to do, right?
Oh, my God, yes.
This was a terrible job on their part. I was speaking to my constitutional lawyer was not in Havana, he was in Harvard, on the right side, and he was suggesting, is there a possibility that, if we look at the course of the tweets that Donald Trump has set out attacking the judiciary and pinning blame for potential future attacks on judges, is there a possibility that actually the White House realizes that it might lose this in the courts and Donald Trump is setting himself up in a position so that, God forbid, there were a future attack, he can then turn around and say, I tried, I did what I could to protect the American people, it was the judges.
Right. You know, the thing is, I mean, a lot of Americans that don't follow the law might be disturbed by this, but the Ninth Circuit, anybody should have told the president, you got to the Ninth Circuit, you're going to lose there. I mean, the second it went to the Ninth, I said, without knowing anything, oh, he's going to lose there. I think he lost 3-0 instead of 2-1 because he's been slamming the judges. And I've got to say, even if I were opposed to this decision and I were the Bush appointee, I'd say, screw it, I'm going to go 3-0, stand shoulder to shoulder with my fellow judges in this case. But you know, this actually is a bigger problem. There's forum shopping that's going on. Liberals can go to the Ninth Circuit. And now, because there's this growing trend, and it really started under President Obama, where you have district court judges putting federal injunctions in place, which is outrageous. And what it does is it stops the law for the entire country.
Happens all the time, though.
Well, it started happening all the time. Barack Obama, Obamacare, immigration orders. Republicans would go to Texas, and one Texas federal judge would completely stop executive orders from Barack Obama. And it allows forum shopping. That's a bigger problem. But again, let's just strip this all down, because we need to get to Kellyanne Conway. We also need to get to
Tim Carney.
We also need to get to Michael Flynn. Tim Carney, will go to you with this one. Let's strip this all down. This is very easy. They can spend this weekend and actually go through the interagency process, get General Kelly involved, get the lawyers involved, get the Justice Department involved. They can very easily redraft this, have the president sign it, and not be in court again. The question is, will Donald Trump do that? If he's worried about the safety of America, will he do that?
No, and I think you're exactly right that redrafting the rule is important, because when you listen to that oral argument, the most friendly judge said, wait a second, you're asking us to listen to guidance from the Homeland Security Secretary that you won't apply it to green card holders? even though the letter of the order does apply to green card holders, you're asking us to rule on something that's not in the order. So that was sort of begging, almost begging the White House to say, yes, reissue it. But when Trump responded with, we will see you in court, he's saying, no, we're not going to give any ground. And this is Trump's personality. This is his style. I'm going to counterpunch. The prudent, the wise thing, what you're saying, what we're saying at the Examiner, what everybody's saying is, write a new order.
And
make sure nobody with a visa is included in it. Narrow it.
Not only the prudent thing, Tim, but if they are so concerned about an attack, the safe thing for the good of the United States of America is draft it up, sign it this weekend or on Monday.
What are the chances they'll
get
do
it
that?
lawyered up, and if we are in danger, then we can actually have an executive order in place on Monday that will do the same thing, that will work effectively.
If it's important enough to do it well and do the proper process and make sure all the lawyers check it out. I agree. You can narrow it to one provision, the 90-day ban on entrants from those 7 countries. That would take care of what he wants to do. But he looks like he wants to fight over his original rule.
You can't discount psychology ever with Donald Trump.
No.
And to go back and redraw this would be an admission of defeat, that the courts beat me, and I have to go back. And what I did initially was either wrong or sloppy, or we screwed it up somehow. It'd be interesting to see if he's willing to bite that bullet.
Best case in the Supreme Court is a 4-4 tie, and I think he could lose 5-3 or 6-2.
He will never lose at the Supreme Court. I will bet
on
you
the merits or on
your
the
last dollar.
order?
I will bet you that this decision by the 9th will get chopped up by at least 4 members of that court.
Well, but 4 is not enough.
I know it's not, but you said maybe 5-2-6.
I think Kennedy could vote.
No,
Joe,
this is an outrageous decision.
What do you think the chances
That's
are?
what he should do.
That's what he should do. Do you
so
think,
0.
All the lawyers say that's what he should do.
I think he has 2 choices. I think choice number 1 is to delay this and wait several weeks and go to the Supreme Court to an unknown outcome, most likely a 4-4 outcome now. Or you can actually, if America's in danger, the way Sean Spicer and Donald Trump and everybody else says America is in danger, then they need to draft it up. I think there's a possibility they will draft it up. And listen, you can still attack the political order. In the same way now, Barack Obama attacked Citizens United. I think it's unbecoming and it makes me uncomfortable, but attack the liberal court, draw up the order, and move forward.
Nice.
And clean up the mess that Miller and Bannon gave America and the world when they decided to go around everybody else.
Before Saturday Night Live, you might want to clean it up. Still ahead on Morning Joe, right? Isn't it going to be Rosie?
Let's clean it up. Is Rosie going to be Bannon?
I don't know if that's confirmed. There's talk.
Don't bet against it.
Okay.
No more betting. Joe's out of money.
Attorney Alan Dershowitz joins us with his analysis of the appeals court's decision. We'll ask him about whether National Security Advisor Michael Flynn broke federal law over his conversations with Russia. Plus, Congressman Jason Chaffetz gets an earful back in Utah over everything from Neil Gorsuch to investigating Kellyanne Conway's comments on buying from Ivanka Trump's line. She was giving a free commercial. Someone who works in the White House. We'll talk about whether she'll be held accountable for her comments.
Wow, this looks like 2009.
That seemed a little awkward.
That's what Republicans are. Republicans, it looks like they're facing what Democrats faced in 2009.
We'll get to that.
And by the way, on Monday, we're going to face, weather-wise, what we faced yesterday. Because Bill Cairns, I asked for snow.
Yeah, we didn't ask for that much.